is interested, how you can get involved in supporting SheRose as an organization.
Next slide, please. Okay. Yep. So SheRose was actually founded in 2016, so it's still quite a baby. And the main aim for this charity is to support girls from underprivileged backgrounds in Malawi, as Sally mentioned, through education and helping to them in improving in all areas of their lives. So this is through tackling issues against child marriages and social injustices against women and girls. So as well as educating and empowering and supporting women, we also want to provide them a platform where they can be celebrated and their achievements be celebrated, and sort of cut out all the social limitations that are against women, and we can challenge that through that platform. So just to share some of SheRose's, or all of SheRose's values and how we work, we believe that community is an incredible way to move things forward. So we want to deliver an organisation and charity that is community-based, and all our approaches should involve the community, and so to involve all members of the local community in order to drive change. We also want to be responsive, so we remain driven and shaped by the communities that we choose to serve, and ensure that we're being informed by these communities and their pressing needs in order to empower them in directing us in the best course of action. So I think sometimes we might believe that, you know, we're making the right decisions, but for SheRose it's about leaning on the community and responding to what their specific needs are, and therefore driving change. So we want to continue to be transparent as well. So we aim to have clear communications with all our stakeholders, ensuring that we remain clear and consistent and supportive in what we provide, and that the impact of our work to our donors remains clear to them. And we want to be comfortable, we are comfortable with being held to account on all areas, whether we're not doing something in the best capacity. We want to be transparent about that and get the feedback from everyone, the community, in order to make the right positive steps forward and make the right amendments when necessary. So SheRose is also all about partnership. So this meaning that, you know, if there are any organizations that are doing the same work or similar work as us, we want to be open to partnering up and to be collaborative in the work that we do, because it's not just one person or one organization that can make a change. It's about building on all the skills and all the engagement and all the work that other people are already doing. So we are open to partnering up and kind of harnessing the relationships in order to maximize impact. And lastly, we are going to remain unstoppable. I think on the screen the values have been switched up a bit, but I think this for us is, with everything, with all our values that we have, ultimately we are going to remain unstoppable, and this means that we're going to be relentless in our goal to fight for the safeguarding and human rights of girls, and we'll stop at nothing, literally nothing, even coronavirus, until they receive the protection and the recognition that they deserve and need. So that's just a little bit about SheRose's values and vision.
Next slide, please.
Okay.
So in addition to what Stella has touched on in the previous slide, as an organization, our mission is to create a platform where women can voice their opinions and challenge the social structure that prevents them from excelling. So bringing all of that together, our vision, our values, our mission, ultimately as an organization, our goals are to combat child marriages, which we do through advancing girls' education, removing inequality of opportunities, so educating girls on their human rights, but also supporting their access to opportunities that might be available where there might be some barriers for them accessing these opportunities. We try to create a space where we can support their access to the opportunities. And as Stella has mentioned, embedding a community-based approach to support girls, so ensuring that all members of the community are involved in supporting girls. So this is from teachers, parents, the girls themselves are key in telling us how they want to be supported, but also looking at different communities. For example, in Malawi where we work, you also have the influence of community leaders and chiefs that are instrumental in making sure that girls in their communities are protected. So we work to make sure that all of these people are on board, and we're hearing from all these people, and that they're involved in shaping the support that we provide to the girls. And lastly, our goal is around expanding our reach and impact. So this is through supporting and educating more girls, and again, done through increasing our workshops and sponsorship programs, which Stella will touch upon later on. Next slide, please. So a question that I often get, or that the organization often get, is why we choose to focus on girls. So for us as an organization, the statistics around child marriages are really shocking, which is why we chose to focus on this area of work. So 1 in 2 girls in Malawi is forced into a child marriage before their 18th birthday. And this is usually to men who are significantly much older than them. And the consequences of this is that they're forced to leave schools and take care of the families they have been taken into. And this very much perpetuates educational barriers and gender inequality. And above all else, it continues the cycle of poverty, because the girls are restricted from advancing their education, and their limitations to the girls' abilities to advance themselves in their social settings, their abilities to get jobs or to complete any other areas of their life is limited, because obviously they have been hindered from progressing in their education. Now, I think it's important to recognize that there are so many challenges facing Malawi as a country, whether that's high unemployment rates or struggles in men's mental health, and so many other issues. And while we acknowledge these, as an individual or as an organization, we cannot address them all. And our hope is that if we all tackle various issues, if different organizations are tackling various issues, collectively, we're all creating greater impact for the same community. But I think it would be quite wrong for us to assume that we can tackle all these issues then, because we're not going to give them the maximum effort that they need. So just choosing one issue and tackling that to the best of your abilities, and hoping that other people are also tackling different issues, then we can collectively impact a community. So for us, we very much aim to shape a community and a society where all individuals have their human rights realized and respected, where women are treated equally and their abilities and their potentials are realized, nurtured, and celebrated. And as an organization, we believe in the power of education, as opposed to merely financially supporting people and giving them money, where this money can easily run out. And supporting them through their education for us is a lifelong investment that can make girls self-sustainable for their entire lives. And education means freedom, and it allows girls to access a better future for themselves. And this is something that can never be taken away. So as much as it might seem easy for us to want to financially just give someone money to ease their problems, that doesn't really alleviate the issue. And it still means that once that money runs out, they'll be back to the same issues that they were facing in the first place. So investing in someone's education is a lifelong investment that can ultimately yield greater results.
Yeah, and I would agree with that as well. Sorry, next slide, please. In terms of just sustainable ways of continuing to empower girls, like education is literally the most key. So just to speak about, some of the work that SheRose does in terms of following that path and following what Kelly was saying, we've got 3 main areas. So workshops being one of them. So we run workshops with primary schools, and at the moment we are partnered up with one primary school in sort of northern Malawi? I don't know my geography.
You're really testing my geography right now.
Blantyre, yeah, northern Malawi, region of Malawi.
Just say Cholo.
Cholo.
I think it's central. No, I really don't want to say much.
Just in case someone Googles like they were wrong. But yeah, so we run workshops with, primary schools, and we've got one that we're partnered up with at the moment. And the aim of these workshops are basically to nurture girls and to empower them by equipping them with the knowledge and the advice that will enable them to, advance towards their future. So the workshops deal with different things as shown on the screen. Some stuff concerning human rights, so learning about the basic human rights that the girls actually have and that they deserve, so that when they are faced with anything, they are able to know what it is that they can and can't do in those situations. Gender equality being part of that. Sexual health awareness, so for a lot of young girls, it's sexual health mixed in with culture as well is not something that might be spoken about or discussed with family. So having a platform or a space where they can discuss these issues or these areas so that they are aware about their own bodies and their own health is really, really key in empowering girls as well. Sexual violence against women and other topics as well. So we aim to provide support with anyone dealing with sexual health experiences as well, so that, you know, as Kelly said, we are creating that community where girls know that there's a partnership and that they are supported in a comfortable space. So by equipping girls with practical skills and by through these workshops, we run things like making sanitary towels and bras from home sourced materials. So it's you know, workshops that kind of build on the everyday and build on things that we might not necessarily see as barriers. But for a lot of girls, for example, having sanitary towels and having sanitary pads is a barrier for them to go to school. If you don't have those things, you might end up staying at home and not getting the same education as everyone else. But by equipping these girls through these practical workshops, we're making sure that those barriers are slowly being broken down and those hindrances are sort of being tackled. And these workshops are usually pretty informal and they're fun and they incorporate different traditional games. So in Malawi, we love to sing and we love to clap and all of that. So we try and like bring in, you know, that comfortability so that it's not someone talking at you in a lecture. It's something that is building on the community and the culture that we have. So before we move on to the next slide, this is a little bit of interactivity. And feel free to type into the chat bar as well. No one has to say things out loud, but what do you think you can get with £10 in the UK? Please type your answers. There's a prize at the, I'm joking, there's no prize. So what do you guys think you can get with £10? Like what's the first thing that you'd probably buy? Anyone?
You could get at least free Tesco meal deals.
Oof, yes, yes. What about £40? Don't be shy. I think like a decent pair of trainers, not like the bougie ones, but like a decent pair of trainers maybe. I don't know what else. If you go to
like,
really...
I think you could go to like TGI's, have a meal and a few cocktails on £40.
Yeah, so I think just to put into perspective, which Kelly is going to talk about, would you go onto the next slide, please, Sally?
Yeah, so I guess just to put it into perspective, so £10 is the equivalent of what it costs to put for a girl to go to school for a term if they're attending day secondary school, and £40 is a term's fee for a girl who's attending boarding school. So that £40 would pay for their education, will pay for their board, so their accommodation for the term, and it would also pay for meals, so 3 meals a day. So for something that we can kind of like splash out in, I don't know, probably like an hour, that's somebody's education for a whole term. So I think just to put it in context of how little it is that it costs to kind of put someone through an education. And I think, so that brings us to the second thing that we do as an organization, which is running a sponsorship program. So in Malawi, primary school education is free, but you have to start paying school fees in secondary school. And it's usually at this point that most girls drop out of school as their families are unable to pay for their secondary school education, which to us seems quite a small amount, but to a lot of families in Malawi, that's something that for them, that's family, their household income that they use for other things, so they can't even begin to think about using that money to send their daughters to school. So our sponsorship programs involves providing financial assistance to girls who have been selected into further education, but whose families are unable to meet the financial costs. So like we mentioned, it's £10 a term for day students and £50 a term. Actually, we said 40, but it's actually £50 a term for boarding school. And we're currently sponsoring 16 girls. So of these 16 girls, 8 of them are in day secondary school and 7 of them are in boarding schools. And we have one that's in primary school that was identified as having some needs. So we support her in primary school, but the hope is that when she transitions into secondary school, we'll continue supporting her with her education as well. Next slide, please. So the next slides will kind of just give a little bit more details of some of the girls that we sponsor. So we chose 2 cases to just tell you a little bit about 2 of the girls that we sponsor on our program.
Yeah, so this is Chrissy, so she's 15 years old. Her father passed away when she was younger, leaving her mum to look after her and her brother. And she likes sports, especially football. We love that. And maths as well as chemistry. And her inspiration is that she would like to be an accountant in the future. So that is like, you know, someone who's got a vision already and they know what they want. So by sponsoring someone like Chrissy, we're able to sort of start building towards that future that she seeks and really wants to achieve. Next slide, please. And this is Emma. She's also 15 years old. 16 now. Her father passed away, leaving her mom to look after her and her 3 sisters and her brother, which is such, you know, it's a huge responsibility to have to carry at that age already. So she likes local sports, and I think this being netball, because we love netball in Malawi, physics, maths and jijewa. And her inspirations are that she wants to become a doctor in the future. So yeah, as Kelly said, sometimes it's great to showcase some of the people that are already being sponsored in order to show that, you know, the work and the money that we're always constantly raising is actually going to something. And regardless of it being, you know, a few girls, that is a huge impact to be able to change those lives. So yeah. Next slide.
Just before you go into the next slide, I think those 2 stories they're similar in that obviously their father passed away and this caused the family to start struggling. And this is such a common occurrence in Malawi, and it illustrates the dangers of women not being educated. And it shows that because the women are not educated, they're not entirely independent. And their whole dependency is on a man, so they end up suffering and are unable to support their families when their husbands unfortunately pass away. And I think this is why it's so important to educate women, because it means that they're self-sufficient, and it means that they're able to support their families and their children if their partners unfortunately pass away.
So yeah, as well as workshops and sponsorships, we're working to build a mentoring scheme. So this is, you know, something that we thought would be really crucial, especially now where, you know, we're not able to actually be physically there doing workshops. It's important to have someone who you can sort of lean on and who you can talk to and who can build you up and pull you up in all areas. And it's also kind of leaning on that community approach that we really want to push for, which is that it doesn't take just us as an organization. It can take anyone who's interested in being a mentor to someone to be able to create change. So the aim for the mentoring scheme is mostly peer-to-peer. So being a peer mentor to someone that the girls can relate to, and where they can support one another in order to empower the girls. So we aim to pair one person up, or one individual with one of the sponsored girls within the career that the girls are interested in. So for example, with Emma wanting to be a doctor, if you know, someone that's studying in that area, they can pair up with her and offer her some of the knowledge that they're already going through. So it's all about, you know, offering the support and encouragement that the girls need on the program. And it means, you know, helping them to deal with and navigate everyday life and challenges, as well as provide career guidance. And this isn't about, you know, being a specialist in that area. It's not about you being a doctor already, or the peer mentor being a doctor already. It's about providing a space where there can be conversation on someone that's already going through the journey, and someone that can support in a way that, you know, schools or family in Malawi can't. So yeah, this is something that we're building on, as I said, and if anyone is interested as well in being part of this, we would be open to any ideas, or anyone being or volunteering, I guess. Next slide, please.
So yeah, just to speak a little bit about how SheRose is affecting change in Malawi. We are affecting change by advancing the rights of girls and women, and we do this by ensuring that women are educated and are offered the same opportunities and have access to the same opportunities as men, and just educating women around their human rights in general, around some of the things that they might not have been accustomed to. We fight against child marriages in Malawi, so we do this through the workshops we run, because we speak a lot about the dangers of child marriages and how to prevent child marriages, and also obviously by educating young girls and preventing them from going through child marriages by sponsoring their education. We equip girls with skills to make their daily lives more manageable. So as Stella spoke about, kind of like educating them and helping them to learn how to make sanitary towels from reusable material, how to make bras from homely sourced materials. So just helping them to be able to navigate life a little bit more easier. And we are providing alternatives for girls after primary school. So research shows that it is at this point that a lot of girls are forced into their child marriages, as I've touched upon before, in terms of families not being able to pay for the girls' fees, and then obviously not being able to also financially support the girls, then they look to child marriage as an alternative. So even if we don't end up being able to sponsor the girls, I think what we do and the workshops that we provide are really important, because we are introducing girls to new knowledge. Some of these girls have literally never heard about human rights before. And I think like we might take it for granted, but here we discuss our human rights and knowing what rights are afforded to us, and it's very much normalized. And I can easily challenge people when I feel like they've infringed on my human rights, and I know the channels by which I can take to kind of fight for my rights. But for so many of these girls, we are introducing them to the very idea of human rights. Like, this is the first time they're hearing about anything concerning human rights, or even what are human rights, and like how can I even access my rights or fight for my rights when they're being infringed, and what does infringing my rights actually mean? So when you actually attend these workshops and you see people talking about human rights and these girls not really having an idea, and as you're leaving that workshop you've kind of introduced them to this really empowering thing, that is so important, and it's such an important thing for us to be a part of, to kind of introduce them to this thing that can change their lives and that can stop them from being abused and being forced into these practices that are very much an infringement of their rights. But these girls have no idea that there are mechanisms and there are laws out there that can support them. So yeah, it's a really powerful thing. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I didn't realize I muted myself. Just to add on to that as well, in terms of just partnership, which we were talking about in the beginning, I think what we try to do is to bring in individuals that have had the same experiences or similar experiences to the girls. So recently we had a chat with Memory Banda, who's child marriage. She's an activist against child marriages, and she's kind of been in that experience with her own family. So having talks with her and workshops with people like her really showcases that, you know, you can have an opportunity to speak and to get out of that. And I think for Memory as well, she started with just knowing that she felt wrong or it felt wrong to her to have to marry so young, and that she wanted more. But then by taking that first step, she actually started to discover what her rights were through the journey. So I think by having people like her speak and kind of visualize or be kind of the voice for girls who might feel the same but not know how to go about it, it's really, really key in kind of just like opening that first little what if, you know, kind of to enable girls to listen to that inner voice a bit more. But yeah, in terms of like how anyone can get involved really, and as I said in the beginning, SheRose is a very young charity and it's a small organization, but we try and bring in any ideas that anyone might have. Literally anyone who's got ideas, we're open to working with them. So some of the ways in which you can get involved are through fundraising. So as we said, you know, £10 can make such a huge difference. So any money that you raise is actually crucial and significant in making changes to the girls that we're sponsoring. For example, so we've got someone, Camilla, she's actually the Vice President for Arts University Bournemouth, and she's doing a lot of work fundraising for us. So she's a creative and she makes things like earrings and little like interior decor things that she sells, and all of that money she's fundraising for SheRose. So a lot of people think, you know, you kind of have to be in it or you have to do a lot in order to achieve a lot. And honestly, like, I think just providing your skills and providing ways in fundraising and in any way that you can do is actually crucial for us. You can also help with researching for funding opportunities. So this literally means if you're interested in research in general, and if you're good and you have a keen eye for looking at funding that's pointed towards education and girls' rights, that would be really, really useful for us as well. And this literally is flexible, so you can do this within your own time as well, and provide us with any information, because we always need that support. You can help with our online presence, so looking after our social media platforms, and if you do that, you'd be working with me. So this means, you know, kind of keeping that presence alive and being transparent, as we said, in our values, making sure that people are seeing what SheRose is doing, making sure that people know what we're about, and also providing people with a knowledge and more of an understanding of what it's like to actually be you know, in Malawi and doing those workshops where they can't physically be there. And yeah, I think these opportunities always expand and we're always growing, so these might end up looking different in terms of you working in terms of online presence, being you working with someone in Malawi who's on the ground. That could also mean, you know, you contacting different people within different platforms to kind of engage with them and bring engagement to the charity. So yep, alongside that, we are always open to generating ideas for fundraising events. So I think in the past we've done things like tea parties. We're actually in the process of promoting a fundraiser that we've got this Saturday. So that's going to be selling materials, earrings and interior decor that creatives have donated. So they've donated their craft in order to do a fundraiser. So that's something that you can also help us with. You can become a mentor. So if you're studying a particular subject and you think that just having that knowledge might help someone else and might give a girl in Malawi that empowerment to continue working within that career route, you can also become a mentor. Or any skills that you have that you think would be useful in just developing and bringing us further to the goals and the mission that we're on, that is also very, very welcome. So yeah, we're pretty flexible. We're open to ideas and we are open to any help that you're willing to support with. Yep, next slide, please. So cute. Does anyone have any questions? I know we've kind of talked at you for the last God knows how many. But feel free to ask any questions in the chat bar as well. And if you don't have anything right now, and if something pops up later and you know, want to ask us questions, you can also contact us via social media.
Maybe go on to the next slide, because that's got all of our platforms that people can contact us on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
I'd just be curious, how are you sort of like coping with COVID right now? Like, how is, because are you able to visit Malawi at the minute, or?
So we haven't really been able to visit, but in terms of like COVID, so from March this year, they were also on lockdown. So all the schools have been closed since March, and they've only started reopening in October. So from March until now, it's been very much just trying to deal with the issues of girls not being in school. And obviously there's now been an increase in the child marriages that have taken place. So for most girls, being at home, that's a setting by which they're more susceptible to child marriages. So some of the girls who are in boarding school, they very much find refuge being in boarding school, because their families then cannot force them into child marriages. But the fact that schools have closed and they're being forced to go back into their homes, that has meant that a lot of girls have either ended up pregnant now, or like they've been forced into a child marriage. So I think the statistics were something like there were about 40 girls a day that were ending up being pregnant during lockdown. And that's because obviously because of financial struggles. So some like older men will promise to give you money if you sleep with them, or you're forced into a child marriage, so you end up pregnant. So there's been so many issues around girls actually not being in school, and it's projected that as schools are reopening now, there's going to be less girls who are returning back to school in October. So I think for us, it's just been about how do we continue to support the girls that are on our program during lockdown. So that's been about looking at ways in which we can maybe disseminate information for them to still be learning while they're at home, but also looking at how do we support them as they're coming back into school now. So I think some initial plans around our workshops are to kind of do an assessment of what's the need, how many girls have not come back to school, and what do we need to do as an organization to make sure that as schools are reopening in Malawi, all the girls that are not returning to school, we're kind of like addressing that and seeing if there are ways in which we can make sure that more girls are in school. So we're currently looking at partnering up with people who are on the ground, who are kind of like experienced in breaking up child marriages, for example, so they can help us. If some girls have been forced into child marriage during this period, what can we do to break up those marriages, and what would be the result of successfully breaking up those marriages, and what steps do we need to take to ensure that while those marriages have been broken up, and it's great, but that's not really the end. That's usually the starting point of supporting those girls, because most times their families won't have them back. So where do they live? Who supports them beyond you having removed them from that child marriage? So it's a huge challenge, but I think going back to some of our values and looking at working as a community and even like collaborative approaches, those are some of the things I think we will look at focusing on. So making sure that we're partnering up with people that are going to be instrumental in kind of like supporting those girls, and making sure that we're kind of changing the perceptions of the communities, so that as we are kind of like running these workshops, we've got the whole community on board, so that removes that one bit of a challenge. Because if you're being challenged by the community, then that adds more pressure as well. So
yeah. I don't know if you've seen the chat. I think Aisha said, I would love to say that I really love what you're doing as a charity. It's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And oh my gosh, I don't want to butcher your name. But Odran said, hi.
It's Oren.
Oh, sorry. All right. Oren, sorry. My bad. Hi, great initiative. What is the political situation around child marriages, and what is the government's approach towards it, etc.? Really good question.
Yeah, and quite a huge question as well. In terms of like the government's approach to child marriages, I mean, on the forefront of things, obviously they're against child marriages, and there's like laws enacted left, right, and center. And Malawi has signed up to all the international instruments that prohibit you from having child marriages or abusing girls or abusing children in general. But on the ground, in practice, they're still very prevalent, and I think that's because of like customary law is quite huge as well in Malawi. So all these practices that are done in the name of culture are very much destructive. So it's quite difficult, I think, to combat culture with politics, because people in the villages, so in the towns it might be I think a bit easier, and people might know maybe around their human rights, but I think very much in the villages, in the rural areas that we work in, and where child marriages are very prevalent, they don't take into account politics. They really do. I don't even think they know anything around politics. And I think for them, I think the issue is that the government doesn't actively enforce the law in those areas. And for example, like in rural areas, if a child is sexually assaulted, for example, that never goes to court, and it's usually the village elders and the chiefs that will kind of sort that out, and their solution would be to marry the two off. So they'll marry the girl off to the man that assaulted her, because to them a husband cannot assault their wife. So they've sorted the issue, and the village is at peace again. And usually in those cases you don't see the law, you don't see the government interfering, because for them it's like their community's issue and their way of sorting it out. So I think in terms of the government approach, they enact laws, they put everything in place, but they don't actively on the ground police what's going on in different rural communities and kind of hold people to account when they breach those laws. Yeah, and that's where the issues are. So.
And I think just to add on to that, like yes, you can look at these specific issues around child marriages, but I think what the government also maybe fails to acknowledge other issues around generally. So I think, as we showed with the girls that we sponsor, poverty or the death or loss of a parent or a father particularly seems to be like one of the main issues that it's kind of like what's the word? One thing happens and then something else kind of happens because of that thing. So I think there are other, as well as like political situation where the government might have the best laws or international laws are set up. It's, I guess, what practices and what is the general feel of the country, like what is it going through in order to that is causing all of these things. So I think culture is part of that, and poverty and lack of just general living resources is also a huge part of that. And I think that's maybe like other areas that the government could do better in my personal opinion. That's a really great question though. Mm-hmm. Sorry for butchering your name as well. I shouldn't have tried. Does anyone else have any other questions? No. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I think that's it from us. And as we said, if you don't have any questions now, you can contact us anytime later through our social medias. We're always active, and through our website as well. If you want to get involved in, being a volunteer in any way as well, feel free to contact us and share your ideas. We're very, very like super flexible and open to any ideas. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was
all the social media details in the chat.
Oh, thank you. And I do think it's amazing, like what you guys are doing. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.